David.
Chip.
It's so great to see you. My hand is really bright right now.
That's like the hand of, I was going to say the hand of Moses, but it wasn't its hand, it was face. That's like the face of Moses, but with fingers.
We had a really great time with you on the Why Israel Zoom conversation, which we'll be doing again in April. We thought it'd be really great to do kind of a post-event catch-up with you. One of the questions that's come in is to do with a lot of these theological circles or theological schools that exist here in the UK in particular. How do we help them to discover their Hebrew Jewish roots?
Yeah, look, I think that is a really good question, and I feel the same. And I have taught in some Bible colleges, not the big American ones that seem to churn out a lot of the pastors in America, but certainly I've been involved in some of that, and I think it is really good. But there's no easy, simple answer straightforward to that one. I think that is really a question of, okay, the groundswell of what's going on. But there's lots of great scholars who've been doing the kind of research that's informed what I know and what I read, and it's about that trickling through into those colleges. I just don't think there's any easy answer to this. It's a mixture of the prayer, it's a mixture of the groundswell of interest. Here's a good thought, is that if we can reach the next generation with a much greater normalization of this stuff, so it just becomes bread and butter, of course you'd need to know this stuff. And I think there is an element that is happening, that people are realizing. You think of a book like John Mark Comer's book about the ruthless elimination of hurry, draws so much off a lot of the Jewish stuff, the Sabbath stuff. And if the next generation get educated and get hungry for that kind of stuff, then there'll be probably more of an expectation that will be taught in the seminaries. It has to be an element of what God is doing. Think of a church like Gateway. I'm in touch with Gateway in America, and I spoke to Nick, who runs the Gateway Center for Israel out there. And that's a church that's passionately involved in all areas of what we would consider important: gospel preaching, reaching the poor, but also in terms of what God's doing in Israel. And they had a network event, and they were talking to 140 pastors in their network, all with churches minimum 500 and a lot of them 1,000 in their thousands, about the importance of Israel and of all of this stuff we're talking about. And I think it's that education that's coming through, but I just don't think there's an easy answer. It's getting the right kind of teachers. I went and taught C3, Phil and Chris Pringle. Yeah. So I went in Sydney when I was doing the book tour. They invited me to come and speak in the college students do early morning devotionals every day. And they invited me to come and speak on the Jewish Jesus stuff. And they're all young leaders, and probably about 100 of them or so, I don't know. On the plus side, they're inviting me to come in and do that. On the negative side, they probably get very little else that is related to Israel and these Jewish aspects of things. That's why I feel like my mission and your mission is we're taking this stuff from being peripheral to like, a novelty session, to being like, this is the writing through the stick of the rock. So it just, of course you have to learn about this stuff. I think I was talking about Shakespeare in our previous time. It would be weird, wouldn't it, to spend years of your life, 3 years studying Shakespeare and do one novelty session on, and I'm not saying C3 do this, because for all I know they do lots. I'm just saying that in some places it feels like that. And I've heard students come out saying they've learned very little, but it would be very odd, wouldn't it, to spend 3 years studying Shakespeare and do one novelty session on England, on the Englishness of Shakespeare. Look, that said, it's easy to sort of categorize these things, and I don't want to be guilty of doing the kind of black and white thing. In reality, a lot of people are studying a lot to do with this stuff. They're studying a lot to do with Israel, they're studying a lot to do with, but they study it from a historical perspective, and they don't necessarily have that sense of revelation of God's love for Israel and the Jewish people and the ongoing marriage. Just think that there's part of this is like a work of the Spirit. If it's a mystery, these things are revealed by the Holy Spirit. So I just think we've got to approach it from all fronts. Every bit is useful. Every approach to a leader, every leader who gets hold of this more, every book that brings this into the mainstream like mine, every person doing what you're doing and Maoz is doing and bringing this to people in a much more digestible fashion, all got to work together.
Brilliant. David, that's such a good answer. And we want to encourage anybody watching this to get plugged in to the Why Israel community. It's whyisrael.co.uk.
Yeah.
Next time we talk to David, we are going to be looking at a different question around Gentile churches, majority Gentile churches. What are we able to bring to the party? Thanks so much for joining us, David.
My pleasure.